All right, good afternoon and welcome to the October 2022 WEJF Impact Meeting sponsored by Michael Best Law Firm. My name is Allie Lynch. I'm the Executive Director of WEJF. And the purpose of these semi-annual impact meetings is to allow donors, sponsors, and staff of our legal aid providers to learn what's new at WEJF, hear some client success stories told by representatives of the 3 legal aid service providers that WEJF supports, recognize our major sponsors, and get an update on our annual campaign progress. The highlight of these meetings is the client success stories to allow donors, sponsors, and service providers the opportunity to hear the impact that support of civil legal aid is having on economically disadvantaged Wisconsinites who are in need of legal help. So let's jump into it. What's new at WEJF? We have some new board of directors members since April. Erica Bierma from Axel Brynolfsson, Andrew Chrisman from Von Briesen and Roper, Dave Fenlon from Reuter Ware up in Green Bay, Mindy Giptos from Hush Blackwell, and Jane Landretti from Stafford Rosenbaum. So welcome to those new board members. Our website officially launched. I announced it at the last impact meeting, but it's officially launched now. The new address is wejf.org. I hope you'll find it to be a more clean, modern design and more mobile friendly experience. The old address will still redirect to the WEJF address as well. The Eisenberg dinner is on for this year. We've had a 2-year hiatus because of COVID, but we're back on this year on Saturday, October 29th. We'll be holding the Eisenberg dinner at the St. Kate in Milwaukee. And registration is still open on the WEJF website until October 20th. So if you haven't had a chance to register yet, you can still go ahead and do that. There's still sponsorships available as well if that's of interest to anybody on the call. We'll be honoring Thomas K. Zander with the Eisenberg Lifetime Achievement Award and Matthew V. Hayes from Legal Action of Wisconsin with the Distinguished Service Award. And we'll have a keynote speaker, John Pollack, who's a national expert on the right to counsel. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the current realities that our providers are facing right now. They continue to face deficits in funding, and so due to a lack of resources, more potential clients are being turned away from services than the number that can be served, which is really unfortunate, and we're working hard to change that. Employee recruitment and retention continue to be a challenge. So you could help out with that by following Legal Action of Wisconsin, Disability Rights Wisconsin, and Judicare Legal Aid on social media and helping share their job posts. They post their jobs on there. In fact, Judicare just posted a number of attorney jobs just yesterday. If you could share those posts, that would really help those organizations a lot with helping those recruitment efforts. And severe caregiver shortages are causing closures of care facilities and forcing residents to move away from their communities, families, and other support systems. And that's really affecting primarily the client base of Disability Rights Wisconsin this year. Even though they face those challenges, we have some really great stories coming out of our 3 beneficiary organizations. And more than 10,000 clients are served by these 3 organizations collectively each year. So we have some great success stories to share with you today, and I'm happy to welcome Phyllis, Jenny, and Sam from our beneficiary organizations to each share a story about how they have helped their civil legal aid clients. So Phyllis, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, give me 1 second and I'm ready to go. Okay, so I work at Disability Rights Wisconsin as an advocate, and Disability Rights Wisconsin is part of a national network of protection and advocacy, or P&A, systems for people with disabilities. While we work on a variety of issues with all different ages, my focus has always been children. I've worked with individual youth and families in a variety of systems, as well as on some systems and policy issues. So today I'm going to talk to you about one particular situation that I was involved in. One teenager that had a developmental disability and some other challenging issues ended up hospitalized at one of our state hospitals, Winnebago Mental Health Institute. Even though this was not the right place for him, there was just nowhere else for him to go when he and his family were in crisis, without adequate supports to remain at home. His family really wanted him to be able to return home, but they needed to make some significant modifications to their home, as well as find some additional services to support him at their home. During this time, he did get transferred to one of our state centers while we were working on advocacy to improve the situation at home so he could come home. I worked with his parents. I worked with the Children's Long-Term Support System at the county and state level and other providers to put together a plan that would work for his return home. I was able to bring in an autism consultant who could help with planning both the home modifications and any types of additional supports that would be needed. She was able to go visit him at the location that he was at the state center and come up with some good ideas for a successful transition plan back home. The consultant was also able to work with the parents to plan for training for any new staff that would come and support the teen at their home. After quite some time and a lot of negotiating, their home was modified to have a space that was specifically designed for him to meet his needs, and the consultant was also able to stay involved to help train staff. The long-term support program, both the county and state folks helped to get this in place and to support the family. He was able to return home to live with his family, although due to significant provider shortages that we're struggling with all over the state of Wisconsin, they do continue to struggle to get enough people to support this plan. This is just one example of many where I've advocated alongside families for kids to get services and supports so they can stay at home in their community and thrive.
Thank you, Phyllis. Jenny, you can go next.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to briefly share about a recent Victory for Legal Action's farm worker project at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals on our case Luna Venegas v. Signet Builders. Mr. Luna Venegas is a Mexican national who has been coming to the U.S. on H-2A visas for a number of years to perform construction work on large livestock confinement structures. The H-2A program is jointly administered by 3 federal agencies, the U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and the Department of State. And it allows employers in the U.S. to recruit and bring in workers from outside of the U.S. to work temporarily in agriculture. Use of the H-2A program has increased exponentially across the U.S. in recent years, including significant increased usage in Wisconsin. In 2020, Mr. Luna Venegas reached out because he wanted to know why he was not being paid overtime premiums, meaning time and a half pay for all hours worked over 40 in a work week for the construction work he was performing. He typically worked more than 40 hours just about every week of the season and recalled that a number of years prior, he had been paid overtime premiums, but for about the last decade that had stopped. The legal issue in this case centers on the Fair Labor Standards Act, also known as the FLISA or the FLSA, which excludes those working in agriculture from overtime premiums. We believe that individuals working exclusively in construction work on large livestock confinement structures are performing construction work, not agriculture, and because of this should be paid overtime premiums for hours worked over 40 in a week. Mr. Luna Venegas and the thousands of other workers in his situation across the country have lost and are losing thousands of dollars in pay each season that they do this work because they are not paid overtime premiums. We have been co-counseling Mr. Luna Venegas' case with Iowa Legal Aid's Farm Worker Program, and we also co-counseled the appeal with a private workers' rights attorney with extensive appellate experience. Additionally, we received a lot of support from a veteran farm worker law attorney from out of state. In January 2021, we filed a complaint with the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Wisconsin based on this FLSA violation. Signet filed a motion to dismiss, essentially saying that based solely on the facts in the complaint, Mr. Luna Venegas' work fell under the Fair Labor Standards Act's agricultural exemption because it was performed on a farm. The motion to dismiss was granted and the case was dismissed. We then filed an appeal to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals on behalf of Mr. Luna Venegas. In addition to our briefing in the appeal, 4 separate amici briefs were also filed in support of the appeal. one by a former construction company owner who was forced out of the industry when competing construction companies began using H-2A workers and paying lower wages, thus accepting lower bids on projects. Two by construction union groups, the Wisconsin Building Trades Council and the Iowa Building and Construction Trades Council. And a fourth brief was submitted by the National Employment Law Project, along with several other worker rights groups. On August 19th of this year, the Seventh Circuit issued its opinion remanding or essentially overturning the dismissal of the case and sending the case back to the district court to proceed. The decision was really very good because it did more than just send the case back to the lower court. It went into much detail about the factors that the court should use in determining whether the work was exempt agricultural work or not, and even acknowledged the racist roots of the Fair Labor Standards Act, that as it was being enacted in 1938, Southern lawmakers demanded that it exclude the, at the time, predominantly Black agricultural workers from overtime premiums. This was a great win, but our work on the case is not over yet. Signet filed a petition for rehearing en banc, asking the entire Seventh Circuit panel of judges to reconsider the decision. And we are still waiting for the court to rule on this. We also are preparing to proceed with the case back at the district court. Mr. Luna Venegas continues to come to the US on H-2A visas performing construction work. And he recently told us that this year, because his current employer knew that this case was going on, the current employer has been paying the workers on his crew overtime premiums. We are encouraged by this, but we also know that the payment of overtime premiums is not happening for essentially all other H-2A workers doing this type of construction work across the country. We at Legal Action's Farm Worker Project are honored to represent Mr. Luna Venegas in this case.
Thanks so much, Jenny. And Sam, go ahead with your story.
Good morning, can you hear me? Good morning, my name is Sam Hutchison. I am a community lawyers project attorney at Judicare. Judicare serves 33 counties in northern Wisconsin and all of the tribes throughout the state of Wisconsin. I want to share a story that, well, a case that was resolved earlier this summer. I had a client, a housing client, who was a tenant of public housing in one of the northern counties. She was schizophrenic. She also had a past struggle with methamphetamine addiction. At one point, over, I think it was last winter, she had a schizophrenic episode. Unfortunately, she relapsed on methamphetamine. She took herself to the hospital because she was having a breakdown. At the hospital, she admitted to using crystal methamphetamine. There were police at the hospital who took her to the hospital, who compiled a police report. That was in the police report, and that police report ended up with the Public Housing Authority. HUD has mandated that public housing authorities have a one-strike policy for drug-related criminal activity. Drug-related criminal activity includes just simply the use of illegal drugs. And so they gave her a notice of termination of tenancy without a right to cure. We decided to represent her in the informal hearing process. We argued that although HUD had mandated that the Public Housing Authority have this policy, that HUD did not mandate that they actually strictly enforce this policy in every particular occasion. In this case, we argued that the client, there was no evidence that the client had manufactured or distributed methamphetamine. There was no evidence that this wasn't anything but a one-time occasion. We presented evidence that she had been treated in the past and relapsed. After a series of a couple informal hearings and several extensions, lasted about 6 months, I believe, we were finally able to obtain, through the help also of the client's social worker, a reasonable accommodation to basically allow her to stay in the apartment as long as she followed through with a treatment plan for her addiction issues. And we were able to secure the reasonable accommodation. And after about 7 months, a 7-month battle, the termination notice was rescinded. So she is able to maintain her housing now, which is important because obviously if you had past issues with drugs and you had mental illness and you're a single parent, not having housing would be just another devastating blow. So we're happy that she was able to retain her housing in this case.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Jenny and Phyllis as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell your stories. I find them really inspiring as a donor myself, and motivating. And I love that there's so much collaboration going on with other, with Iowa Legal Aid and with other state agencies within Wisconsin. And that it takes a community. But thank you so much for the work that you guys do. I really appreciate that very much. And thanks for sharing your stories with us today. Before I share with everyone our 2022 annual campaign fundraising progress, I want to take a moment to recognize our major corporate and law firm sponsors so far for 2022. WEJF is appreciative of their support, and nearly every organization on your screen has been a longtime supporter of WEJF, a few of them since the very beginning in 1997. I also want to send a big shout out to our wonderful board of directors. These folks meet several times a year to help run WEJF, work their networks for donations and sponsorships, and help spread awareness of EJF and the work of our beneficiary organization. So thank you to our board members. To give you a little bit of context of the number I'm about to share with you for 2022, I just want to remind you that the total donations received by WEJF by fiscal year are here for the last 10 years. Together, we've moved up from about $275,000 raised in 2012 for civil legal aid to just over $434,000 in 2021. And so far, right now, we're halfway through our fiscal year for WEJF because it starts on April 1st. So October 1st was halfway through the year. So far to date for 2022, we have raised $317,598 for WEJF and civil legal aid in Wisconsin. So that's really exciting. And thank you so much again to all of our donors and sponsors and supporters. I'm just so appreciative of all of you. I'm so extremely appreciative of all the work that the civil legal aid providers do. And I'm just really excited to be part of this group. So that's everything that we had today for you. If you have any questions, I welcome you to unmute yourself now and ask a question, or you can type the question into the chat. I also welcome feedback at any time, and my contact info is there on the screen for you. And it's also on the WEJF website as well. If there are no questions, though, I'm going to bid you all a wonderful Friday, and I hope you all have a fantastic weekend, and thank you again for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.